So we'll be starting the first post-Tishrei Shir, Choshen Mishpat, Shir 51, Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches. I'm going to be giving an introduction to Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches and then starting two Seifim in Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches. I know not everybody, some people already learned Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches, but that is what we will be talking about today. And if you just joined, welcome, and start from Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches. Kuf Tzadik Ches begins with the halachas of kinyanim that are relevant to metaltalin, two things that are not karka, that are not connected to the ground, that are movable. What works, what doesn't work. But before we will begin with discussing this, I want to discuss a couple nekudas from previous simanim that we did not have a chance to learn, or we didn't have a chance to speak about in shiurim, and we will then go into Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches. First one is a kinyan on something which is going to be in the future. The second topic is going to be the topic of kinyan oidisa, which is hoida, admission, and another nekuda about kinyan metaltalin, which is in Siman Kuf Tzadik Dal. So let's start first with the dinim regarding a future kinyan. So in Siman Kuf Tzadik Aleph, regarding kinyan karka, the Ramah writes in Sif Daled that if somebody sells karka, sells land to somebody, whether with a shtar or whether with money, and he tells him you will acquire it within 30 days, and then the shtar ripped, or the money got lost, then if he tells him meyachshav, he's kaina, and if he does not tell him meyachshav, he is not kaina. And the Ramah over there says the same thing applies to kinyan chazakah. That means if you want to be able to effectuate the kinyan from now going forward, you're going to have to say meyachshav, but doing an act of kinyanim now and then later expecting it to kick in 30 days, does not work unless you say me'achshav. The same idea is also in Siman Kuf Tzadik Hey, where it discusses the dinim of kinyan sudar, and which you guys already learned. And Sif Hey over there, the Mechaber over there writes, Yashemrim, that the kinyan sudar does not work unless the exchange happens. You give him the chayfetz right away after the kinyan sudar, after the chalifin, you give him what he's purchasing right away. But if he tells him, make a kinyan now and you will acquire the chayfetz within 30 days, that kinyan that you did now has no effect. Why? Because at the time that you're going, kinyan chalifin works as exchange. So if now you're going to be giving something to the moicher, and the moicher is supposed to give you the product back, and he's not giving you the product back, then he's not giving you the product in exchange, he's telling you in 30 days you'll be kainat. Then in 30 days, when the kinyan is supposed to kick in, the moicher doesn't have your chayfetz in his hands. If he doesn't have your chayfetz in his hands, then the kinyan has nothing to be chal on. If the kinyan has nothing to be chal on, it doesn't work. Again, over there, that's what the Mechaber over there says, unless he tells him me'achshav. Same thing, tell him me'achshav, then it kicks in. And the Ramah over there adds an important part, that if it's a stam, whenever it's a stam, we say that mistama, it was with the intention, with the idea of being a kinyan me'achshav, because nobody likes wasting time and doing a kinyan which has absolutely no effect and no purpose. Same thing is also in Siman Kuf Tzadik Zayin over there, is talking about buying a behema. And Sivav, the Mechaber over there writes that if the seller tells the buyer, acquire the behema, do meshicha and you will acquire it. Meshoich v'tikne. First do meshicha and then v'tikne, and then acquire it. Or chazek v'tikne. Do a chazaka and then you will acquire it. And he went and he did the kinyan, it doesn't work. Why? Because the mashmos of the lashon is do a kinyan and then you will acquire it. Not that you will acquire it at the moment of the kinyan. So even though it happens a second afterwards, he doesn't tell him after 30 days, he tells him it's going to be a second afterwards, because the lashon implies that it's not right away, then the same problem occurs, that the kinyan has nothing to Kinyan does not kick in, and it does not work. The only way it's going, and that's what the Ramos says, that you have to say Meshoich uknei, Chazeik ukni, that the law, it's a different kind of lashon, which implies that at the moment that you do the Meshicha or you do the Kinyan, at that moment you will acquire it. That is regarding doing a Kinyan right away. Sif Zayin right away, the next Sif over there, the Mechaber over there says, but if you tell him, do Meshicha and you're not going to be Kain until after 30 days, it doesn't work unless you tell him me'achshav. And it doesn't make a difference, even if the behema is in a agam, which is a place, a mishtamer, it's not a shasayach, it's not a shasarabim, and it's a mokim a mishtamer, still in all it doesn't work, because it doesn't work unless you tell him me'achshav. And why does me'achshav work? Because the idea of me'achshav is, it's not that you are acquiring it now, as in like it becomes yours now, that you could take it home now. It means that it becomes yours now with a t'nai. There's a certain t'nai that this product has to remain in my possession for another 30 days. Not that it's mine, it's yours, but there's a t'nai in the kinyan, so the kinyan is chal now. What's going to happen in 30 days is the t'nai is going to be fulfilled, and then retroactively is going to be chal. That is essentially the nekudus of kinyan me'achshav, which even though it's not connected so much to Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches, we're discussing kinyan of metaltalin, we didn't discuss this, I wanted to bring it up. Now it's going to move on to the second topic, which is kinyan odisa. Kinyan odisa is not mentioned in the Siman. However, if you look in Siman Kuf Tzadik Dalet, Sifkat and Gimel, of the Ktsas, there is over there in certain princes of Cotton Dalet, for whatever reason they split the Ktsas in half, the Gimel into two parts. It doesn't make sense where they split it, but it makes more sense to keep it as one long one and as Sifkat and Gimel. And over there it goes right in the middle. It's a Ktsas which is about 4 pages in the print that you have, and in the new print is probably 3 times as long. And over there it discusses about the kinyanim. Siman Kuf Tzadik Dalet discusses making a kinyan karka with a guy. So which is the most common example of making a kinyan with a guy that we deal with on a regular basis? Mechilas chametz. So the question is, which kinyanim work for a guy for mechilas chametz? We know that in Alter Rebbe was mesaken mechilas chametz. He put all the kinyanim into there. However, Oidisa is not listed in the kinyanim that Alter Rebbe put over there. If you look in this ktsas in the middle over there, after he says all the problems, every single kinyan doesn't work for a guy, he tells you in the Dibur Maschal Amnam, he says that kinyan odisa will work for a guy. Now, what is kinyan odisa? It's important how he describes it. That you sign a paper, Chasim as Yadi, testifies that I sold all the chametz to this and this guy. And then it says, being that I didn't find in the Achroinim a whole full-length discussion about Kinyan Odisa, I'm going to explain to you how it works. And that's when the whole arichus of the Ktsas begins, and it goes for a couple pages long. And he says, first point he points out is Lanyus Daiti, Kinyan Shalemhu. Odisa is a full and complete, a whole kinyan. You don't need anything else in addition to it. It has no less than any other kinyan, whether it's regarding a transfer of ownership or something within mammon, and even if it is for the purpose of to be mafkia a iser. Then he adds, and even though klapish maya galia, both the seller and the buyer in this case know that it's a lie, he says that the emes is not so. Being that it is a kinyan trumps a lie, and therefore it will work through Odisa. Then he brings the Taz in Yeridea, Siman Kuf Samaches, Sifkat and Yudaled. Over there, Hilchas Ribis, and over there the Taz, as usual, disagrees with the Bach. The Bach says that Odisa helps for everything, and the Taz says it only helps for Mammon, it doesn't help for Yisurim. And the Ktsas says, well, I am more comfortable and I believe more in the opinion of the Bach. And he explains why the Bach's opinion is better, that we go based on, that it works Sai for Mammon and Sai for Isser, even if both parties know that it is a lie. And he continues and he says that not only does it work, Oidisa, he says now, so now comes the Ktsas on the next part. What is Oidisa? Who invented it? Is it the Kinyan Midrabanan? Is it the Kinyan Midaraisa? He says the Kinyan Midrabanan. You're going to jump up and say, well, how does the Kinyan Midrabanan work for a Deiraisa? He says it works for Deiraisa also, even to be Mafkia Isser Deiraisa, which is Isser Chametz. However, he says, but if you're going to hold that a Kinyan Midrabanan does not work for something which is Deiraisa, then you have a problem. And he goes into a discussion about it. Now, the Maral Tzunz on Hilchas Pesach in Mogin HaElef, Siman Tov Memches Sivkot Hey, disagrees on the Ktsas. Well, he doesn't quote the Ktsas, but he disagrees with the notion. He says a Kinyan Edisa is a Kinyan Deiraisa, not a Kinyan Derabanan. And he just says that the Tosfos holds that it's a Kinyan Derabanan. And that's what the Ktsas also, when he brings why is the Kinyan Derabanan, he brings a proof from the Tosfos. Rabbi Akiva Eger in Shas HaTshuvos V'Chidushim Siman Chafei also holds that it is a Kinyan Midaraisa, not Midarabanan. Now, how does this Kinyan kick in? You could say it happens when the person says, one person is moided to the other person. You could say it happens when you sign a paper that there is a Haidah. So now, if you look at the Ktsas, you want to be Medayik, you could be Medayik both ways. You could be Medayik that it goes based on the writing. Why? Because the Lashon of the Ktsas is that through the admission and writing, one person is Kaina. And you could be Medayik also Faket. You could say that the writing is only proof of the admission. The Ktsas doesn't clearly specify whether the Kinyan kicks in by the admission or by the confirmation of it, or by the writing of the admission, Chasim As Yodi. What's enough? Come in if something happens between the Haidah and the writing. If something happens between the two, did the Kinyan happen or the Kinyan didn't happen? If the Haidah could be done and then there's nobody to write the document or you didn't sign it, then the question is what happens at that moment. If you look in the Noida Bihuda, Kama, Madura Kama, Choshen Mishpat Siman Lamed, he's medayik from the Gemara that the Haidah itself, the verbal Haidah, is the Kinyan, not the writing. Yeah, and now we could connect it to something we discussed in the beginning of Elul regarding Bichlal Kinyanim, whether the Kinyan happens at the Gmirus Das, or the Gmirus Das is what brings you to the Kinyan. There are certain opinions that hold that the Gmirus Das is what transfers the object. The moment I'm Gomar Belibi in my heart, I had a full and complete understanding that I'm transferring this to somebody else, then it gets transferred from one to another. And therefore, the moment you do the Haidah, whether you do it Baal Peh or you only do it B'chsav, whichever one it works, at that point it's Gmirus Das Gomer Makne. And then it happens even if you do not do any further act, whether it's writing or whether it's a Kinyan. But according to the people that hold that you need a Maisa Kinyan and Gmirus Das doesn't work, you have a problem. How does Haidah work if there is no further Maisa Kinyan afterwards? The Haidah could serve before the Kinyan to prove the Gmirus Das, but the Haidah cannot be the one to prove, to effectuate the transfer from person A to person B. Now, for us, it's B'chal not a kasha. We don't have to worry about the people that hold that this doesn't work, you need a Maisa Kinyan after this. So because you're looking at Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek solves it all for us. There's a tshuva, Choshen Mishpat Siman Chaf, Ois Beis. Over there, it's in I don't know if it's in the booklet or not, I don't remember if I put it in, because it's not really connected to this topic. Over there is the Tzemach Tzedek discusses the difference between, what about somebody that committed to do something, it was to pay a certain amount of money by an adunya, he was supposed to pay it back, and then there was an argument whether the amount of money that he was mischayev, as the Orev was mischayev, that was the full amount that was given, or the full amount that was given was less than that. And let's say it goes into a discussion, the difference between shibud and oidisa. Is the shtar of the Orev a shibud that he agrees, he's meshaved himself to pay a certain amount, or is it a hoidah that he's moided that he's chayev this amount? And the Tzemach Tzedek over there starts by bringing the Kesef Mishneh in Hilchos Mechira, Perek Yud Aleph, Halachot Asvav, that he over there, he goes on what the Rambam says. What does the Rambam say in Perek Yud Aleph, Halachot Asvav? HaMechayev atzmei b'momen la'acher, somebody who obligates himself to give money to somebody else. And then the Rambam explains a few words later, Keitzad, how does it work? He tells the Eidim, you become a mi-Eidim that I'm chayev this and this amount to somebody else. And the Kesef Mishnah says that this din that the Rambam wrote is learned from the Gemara regarding the din of Oidisa. But what does that mean exactly? Tzemach Tzedek explains it. It's saying Loimar. What does the Kesef Mishnah want to tell you? The Mehasa, from that Gemara, we learn that even though both parties know that this money did not belong to the second party, we learned that from the Gemara over there. It was a lie. This Eidah was a lie. You're koine through the Eidah, through the admission, that's when the kinyan happens. What is he moided to him? The hanach zuzi hem shalai. When he, in the Gemara, when he's moided, so two things, it's similar to the Ktsas. First of all, he says, even if both parties know that it's a lie, it still works, the Eidah still works. Second of all, koine alidei ha'Eidah, shemoideloi. He's kind of through the Eidah. You don't need any further act after the Eidah. The fact that there is a Eidah already makes the transfer of ownership. The same thing will apply in this case. When he's moide in a shtar, that he is already chayev the money to him. Even though you weren't chayev it to him. So even though both people know it's not true, and you know that you weren't chayev this full amount of money, and you still sign such a paper that you're chayev, a hoidah that you're chayev, you become chayev, and it works as a kinyan. And then the Tzemach Tzedek then after it says, but the Rav should pay attention to the nusach of the shtar and check that the words, not only the words, also the intention, that the person intended to be moide and not only to be mishtabed. Because if the lashon is that he's obligating himself to pay, not that he's admitting that he owes the money, then it's no longer oidisa. Then it becomes into a discussion whether this is a eschayvus and whether he has a eschayvus to pay. And then it becomes an argument that eschayvus to pay a full amount because you admitted, not because you admitted, because you signed a paper that you're eschayv to pay this amount. Was that because you expected, I'm just expanding what Tzemach Tzedek doesn't go into details, but because you expected there's going to be a full amount being given, or because this was the amount that you were ready to put up. Whichever one it's going to be, you have to find out how much is going to pay, but it's no longer a hoidah that transfers the ownership of the money from one person to another. Now, but let's go back to the people that hold that a kinyan, now let's put this Tzemach Tzedek to the side, but let's go back to the people that hold that a kinyan is not only totally in Gemilas Das, but it requires more than just the Gemilas Das, also requires an act. So then, how would it work in the idea of Oidisa, maybe you could say, well, we spoke about it then, there's an Erech Shai which says regarding Mechila, that the Mechila, even though there is no kinyan with Mechila, by the mere fact that somebody waives his ownership off it, the other person could be then koine it. It's not because the Mechila transfers from one to another, but because the Mechila removes your ownership from it, and then the other person can make a kinyan on it. So it could be the same thing will apply also by Hoida, by kinyan Hoidisa, that the moment the person is Maide, it doesn't mean that his Hoida will create a transfer of ownership, but his Hoida will then will remove one person will remove the seller from the equation, and then the buyer could go ahead and make a kinyan. But it's not so clear if that's what it means. That's one way of explaining it that I could think of. A second way of explaining it is similar idea to this. It's not midin mechila that you're moichel your ownership, but the Shalom Eshiv writes in Madurat Lisah Chilek Gimel Siman Yud Aleph, he says, Hoida lo have a kinyan. Like siluk shemesalek atzmai. Not exactly mitzad mechila, but it's a siluk. A siluk, again, you're removing yourself, you don't have to bring it into the mechila. Yeah, we discuss,
Does ever mention the fact that the keah, whatever it is, that has to make the now chazak on it?
No.
It sounds like it's just the...
No, the Ktsas and the Tzemach Tzedek hold that they does is a transfer of ownership. Yeah. No, the other people disagree. If I explain that that's what it could fit into the Hog Middles Das versus Maisa plus Middles Das discussion that we discussed in the beginning of Elul. I brought it up. It's not in the Ktsas. It become a problem because Machlikas Rishonim how this works. Now let's go back. What? Why don't we? I think today some people put it in, but the Alter Rebbe didn't put it in. I don't know why. Put in all the other ones, and Tzemach Tzedek added 2 more, didn't add this one. At least I don't remember seeing it over there. If somebody remembers, you could tell me. You could check it. I don't remember seeing it in the Alter Rebbe's Nusach. Now, but the Ktsas adds another element to the Oidisa. It's not just Oidisa from one to another. He says, Kol zman de leika edim, leika kinyan Oidisa. If there's no edim for the Hoida, then there is no kinyan Oidisa. And then the Sivis, not here, but in Siman Mem, Sifkat and Aleph disagrees on the Ktsas and hold that you don't need edim al pidin for Oidisa. You only need edim because a chashash that one person is going to lie to the other person later and say, I was never moide to it, but it's not something which affects or delays the kinyan. But in Tzemach Tzedek doesn't go b'chlan to the discussion if there are edim, if there are no edim. Now, here's an interesting point. If you look in Avnei Choshen and Sifkat and Daled, he says that even though the Ktsas is machriya, that the main kinyan for Mechilas Chametz that will work is kinyan Oidisa, he says, I heard from my father, the Rav in Churav, that by sale Oidisa doesn't work. Why? Because the whole idea of Oidisa is mitzad zchus, which is soon going to see. Because I'm moide that this belongs to you, and you're zeicha b'mayida. That's how he understands it. This is another sword of understanding something inside the kinyan. So now the din of zachin doesn't work when I am creating an obligation for you. When it's a present and I am moide that it's yours, so you're zeicha through somebody else, whatever it is, because you acquire something that has no strings attached. But if by me being moide that you are buying my car, you're right now, I created for you a chayv of tens of thousands of dollars. Yes, you were zeicha in the car, but you also were zeicha in the chayv. So it doesn't work. That simply doesn't work. So that's why he says it doesn't work for Mecher, it only works for Matana. Kinyan Yodisa only works for Mecher and Kinyan Yodisa only works for Mecher and only works for Matana, not for Mecher. How are you going to work it out? He says he has a solution for it. Avnei Choshen. He says, have the Eidim receive a Haidah from both of them. Whether that's talking about a guy, either that the guy should sign b'chasimas yodai, that he's moide also, that he's part of for this kinyan, for this transfer of ownership plus transfer of money, or that the Eidim will hear from the guy that he tells them, I admit in front of you that I did this purchase. Now, what happens? We mentioned before from the Ktsas that if the Haidah, Ktsas and Tzemach Tzedek, that if the Haidah is a lie, both parties know it's a lie, then it still works, because that's how Oidisa works. The concept of Oidisa is, I could admit that I owe you money, and if it's an admission, then I have to pay it, even though it's a lie. I know it's a lie, and you know it's a lie. The Avnei Nezer and Chaim סימן Tov Kuf Mem Beis Ois Chavav goes into a discussion about it, and he says that it seems like from the Avnei Nezer that if it's a Haidah, which is a lie, and both parties know it's a lie, it doesn't work. Why?
What do you mean it's a lie? I understand. Two people are saying that this guy bought it, it's a lie. What do you mean?
No. I say, I sign a paper that I owe you a certain amount of money. Or I am moide to you that I owe you a certain amount of money. And I am also moide that I sold you, that I bought from you this and this thing. That's Odisa. Now,
Odisa is the kinyan alone. I want to sell you an object.
Right.
And if I'm moide that I'm selling to you, that's not a lie. That is the kinyan.
But what happens if it's, we're talking about the Mechilas Chametz over here. What happens over here is that the guy doesn't really buy it.
Yes, it's a kinyan Torah. His mom said it's a kinyan Torah.
Yeah, but what happens if both, or the concept of it becomes a kinyan. The Oidisa makes it a kinyan. The Oidisa makes it. But the Avnei Nezer doesn't hold that. Seems like the Avnei Nezer doesn't hold that Oidisa is a full kinyan. That's why if it's a lie, it doesn't work. If it will be that I write that I'm moided to you that I owe you $1 million, and for absolutely no reason, you know it's a lie and I know it's a lie, because let's say I was expecting to receive something from you and I didn't receive it, or whatever it is, or somebody else, so like the case with Tzemach Tzedek, there was an order for a Nadunya and not the full amount came, according to Avnei Nezer, it wouldn't work. If it's a lie, it wouldn't work. Why is that? L'chayra, because Avnei Nezer holds that Oidisa is not a full kinyan. Rather, Oidisa is an admission that could be used in Bezdin against you to force you to pay, and you cannot avoid it. But it's not a transfer. So it's more of a schayvus, similar to the way Tzemach Tzedek explains the schayvus, rather than the way Tzemach Tzedek, or shibud, rather than the way Tzemach Tzedek explains Oidisa. That means the Avnei Nezer seems to take Oidisa the same thing as a schayvus and as a shibud. So therefore, if it is a lie, and your schayvus is not true, or because whatever it wasn't fulfilled, then the Bezdin will not be able to obligate you to pay for something which was a lie. Now, what I mentioned to you before about Avnei Choshen, that Matane only works, that Odisa only works by Matane and not by Mechira, and he gives the eitzah of both of them signing it from Mechira. That also you see it's the same thing in Chidush Shirim, in Choshen Mishpat, Sim Kuf Peites, Sif Katan Aleph, and also Nagoy's Baruch Tam that you have on the Hagoyos on the Ktsas, you have the same idea that only works for Matana, but again you'll deal with it when you have to deal with it. Now let's move to one more halacha. This is the second topic of Odisa. You should just know that there's such a concept and it applies because it comes up in Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches peripherally. And now before we move to one more thing in Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches, let's go to the Siman Kuf Tzadik Dalet, specifically the halacha on which this Ktsas latched himself onto.
Is a sale for a discount considered a schos?
Huh?
Is a sale for a discount considered a schos?
Sale for a discount considered a schos? It depends. I mean, there are some people which they see that when they spend 80%, it's considered a schos for them. They spent 80%. No, but I saved 20. Not everybody looks at things, not everybody looks at life that way.
So it's subjective.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's a present, then yeah, well, unless it's something that you don't want to take for whatever reason, it becomes a headache. That it's not a schos. But overall, yeah, a present is much more of a schos than a sale. A sale, even if it's a big sale, if it's something you don't need, you can do with it. There's once in a while you get these messages, people are on these groups, you get all these messages of the sales. So fine, how many lawnmowers could you buy? You don't own a lawn. You guys have 80% discount on it. So sure. Is it a schos? Yeah, well, I saved money on it. But what am I going to do with a lawn if I don't have grass? I live in Brooklyn. Lavdafka I have grass. Or the grass that I have is like this, and the lawnmower is not going to be able to go without hitting anything. Or a snowblower with a tractor snowblower and I don't have a driveway. A lot of things you could buy. A big sales, it doesn't help you anything. Truth is that having a snowblower and you don't have where to put it, a snowblower tractor, and you have where to park it for the whole year, it's not a schos. Even if it's a matana, lavka is a schos. You could flip it, you could sell it maybe, but same thing with a lawnmower is a matana. But as a purchase, even if it's a big sale, it's not worth it. What are you going to do with such a thing? It's going to be more clutter. In Siman Kuf Tzadik Daled, which is the Siman I just mentioned now from the Ktsas, and Sif Gimel, which is the Sif on which the Ktsas is on, the Ramah over there brings, towards the end of the Sif, which is the end of the Siman, the Ramah brings, in Sif Gimel over there, Siman Kuf Tzadik Daled Sif Gimel, he brings the words of the Tur, where the Tur writes at the end of Siman Kuf Tzadik Daled, that everything I spoke about up until now, regarding what Siman Kuf Tzadik Daled is talking about purchasing a land from a goy, that moment is not enough, and you need a shtar, v'chulu v'chulu. It only applies for karka, for land, but not for metaltalin. Why is that? Because, and then the Tur says, because when it comes to karka, when it comes to real estate, the lekeach who's buying from a goy is not having in mind that there's no gemir, is not having in mind to complete the sale until he has a shtar in his hands. Not enough for money. But a metaltalin, in his mind, he already purchased it the moment he gave money. Therefore, you don't need all these dinim. The shtaras don't apply to metaltalin when it comes to a goy. What does it mean that there's a difference between the two? The Drisha explains it. Earlier in Siman Kuf Tzadik Daled, the Drisha explained Dibra Maschel the Kesef Vade Koine Begoy. By a karka, how does it work by karka? I have a house and there's a karka next to it, and the karka is not moving anywhere. But at the same time, I can't bring the karka into my house to protect it. It's going to remain outside. It's going to stay outside. So what's going to happen? I'll pay money. And if I'm dealing with somebody that's not trustworthy, he's going to be honest me to take it back afterwards. So I'll pay him money. If I'm not going to have a shtar, he'll afterwards say, I never sold it to you. And grab it back. Mashenken, by metaltalin, and therefore there's no smichus das by the buyer until he has a shtar in his hands, which proves that it's his. But, which is a metaltalin, which he takes and brings it into his house, he doesn't have that chashash. Why? Because the moment he has smichus das, the moment he pays the money and he brings the products into his house, he's already comfortable that the guy is not going to be able to take it back. And the prisha, yeah, the same one as the drisha, I'm sure you know that. And it's also the same one as the smeh. He, in the end of the siman over there, he tells you, go look in the drisha that I wrote before, and then he adds more. He says, even though I'm metaltalin, you could say that a guy could also play these games. He'll take the money from you, and then he will not give you the lawnmower. So it's not such a big chashash. Mashenkin by karka, where it is more of a chashash that he's going to play around with it, and the same thing the Drisha and the Brisha writes in the Smeh. Same idea, he writes it in short. Pischet Tshuva over there in Sifkot and Hey adds from a Tshuva of the Chasam Sofer, Cheshemishpat Siman Samach Vav, interesting exception for metaltalin, which metaltalin don't apply to this rule of metaltalin when it comes to buying from a guy. And the reason why it's important is because this can also apply to metaltalin later on when we're discussing Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches. That is when a person buys metaltalin which will remain on ground. That means how it will work then. Part it's owned a big piece of land, and the Yid had the right to cut the wood on the land. And the deal was that the wood, he'll cut down the wood, and the wood will stay on the ground, and as needed, he'll go and he'll take it. And the karka is not his karka, so he's not koinet. And he's not doing any other kinyan on it. He's not doing meshicha, he's not doing anything else. And he's paying for it. Over there, the Chasam Sofer says that over there, there's no full smichus das. Why? Because over there, he says that is the same as karka. Being that it remains on the karka, it has the same category as karka, and the svara of the smeh / prisha drisha that the guy is not going to be ma'anas him because you put it into your house, obviously doesn't apply because I'm not bringing it into my house. The wood is remaining on the other guy's property. So therefore, in such a case, the same dinim would apply to that as to karka. Now, what the Ramah says about based on the Torah is by metaltalin it's enough with money, and the Smeh explained it nicely. The Shach comes right away and says, when you look at the Smeh, it's mashma that money alone is enough, and you don't need any kinyan. You don't need meshicha, you don't need agba, you don't need anything else. And he says, obviously this doesn't make any sense. He says, it's talking about by metaltalin that you did meshicha after you gave money. And then you're kaina. So therefore, what's the Torah trying to tell you? That you don't need a shtar. That even though by other things you need a shtar as a proof, when it comes to metaltalin, you don't need a shtar. You need some other kinyan in addition to money. The Nesivis in Biurim Sifkot and Ches says, no, this doesn't fit with the simple lashon of the Ramah, doesn't fit with the simple lashon of the Torah. And the Shach was twisting himself to be able to fit his chiddush into the Ramah, and it doesn't make sense in there, and therefore, no, the halacha is not like the Shach, the halacha is like the Smeh, the way the Smeh understands the Ramah. But when it comes to metaltalin with a guy, moment is enough, you don't have to do any other kinyan. The whole discussion I'm not going to get into, is not enough time. If this applies both ways or one way, I'm just going to mention in a second, I'm going to get to at least one opinion. Now, the Knesset Gdeilo, on that Siman Kuf Tzadik Dal, the Goy Satur, Ois Yudalad, brings from the Tshuvas Masas Binyamin Siman Tzadik Zayin, that if a Yid sends his shliach to pay money to the guy to purchase something, it also works, same thing. Now, in Ois Tezvav, he brings from the Tshuvas Amichosas L'Ramban, Siman Reish Chaf Hey, that in today's day and age, we're talking about the days of the Knesset Gdeilo, the days of the Ramban, that the Goyim had a minhag according to the law that you buy from each other metaltalin with only money, then even those who are, we could also do it that way, even according to the opinions that hold that you need another kinyan in addition to kesef when it comes to metaltalin, and you don't need any other kinyan, even according to the opinions which a shach brings, which hold that the Rishonim which hold that you need the meshicha in addition to it, and the Mata Shimon Hagos Atur Ois Yutes brings that this is also mentioned in the Maharikash and Erech Lechem. Since someone asking about the Yid to Goy to Yid, you look in Mishpat Shalom to the Marasham at the end of this Siman Kuf Tzadik Zalad, and he brings a machlekes. If in today's day and age do we say this, the metaltalin through money is only when a Yid buys from a Goy or Goy buys from a Yid. He brings a Machne Ephraim which holds that it's only when a Yid buys from a Goy but not the other way around. And then he brings other opinions which hold fakert, and the way the Mishpat Shalom phrases the quotes, it seems like he holds that it works both ways. You can look in the Mishpat Shalom, you'll see it. The same thing also in Beis Yaakov over here, one of the Yud Aleph and Shulchan Aruch also says the same thing, similar to it, that it works both ways. And with that, we conclude the introduction. Let's start Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches. We'll probably be able to only get through one sif, but it's better than nothing. Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches opens with a announcement. Yeah, Dvar Torah Mois Koinois. According to Torah Shebechsav, money acquires metaltalin. All forms of metaltalin. Chachamim were mesakin that you need Hagba or Meshicha. And then, if you did Meshicha or Hagba, then you're kaina even if you did not give money after the Kanas Chachamim. And what is Hagba over there? The Tur brings the Rambam, and that's in the Mechaber Paskins, that Hagba applies to anything you could pick up easily, or something you could take apart easily and pick it up easily. So if there's a pile of wood, you could break it up into a few pieces and pick them a few at a time. That's fine. But something which you cannot do, absolutely cannot do any Hagban, or without a lot of work, then you don't do Hagba, you could do Meshicha. But the Ramah Paskins is more lenient, and the Tur, the Ramah Paskin like the Tur over there says that even something which needs a little bit of tayrach, like taking apart a pile of wood, again you don't have to do Hagba, and Meshicha will work. And the Bach brings that is based on the Rashba. Now the Beis Yosef over here mentions that if they made a Tanai, we'll get to that later, it's more connected to Sifei. The Smeh over here explains in Sifkat and Aleph on this Seif, and he says, and Prisha already proved that Midiraisa Mois Koinois by Metaltlin and not Meshicha Vagba. And not that either or and Chachamim eliminated one. According to Torah, Meshicha Vagba does not work for Metaltlin. Only Mois. And Chachamim came and established Meshicha Vagba works. That's how the Smeh here explains in Sifkat and Gimel. He says, look at what the Prisha, where he discusses that if the seller went and took the money that he received, there was no Meshicha Vagba yet. He sold something, he received the money, but there was no Meshicha Vagba from the other side, so now he has money in his pocket. And he went and was Mekadesh a woman with that money. The woman is Mekudeshes L'chumra. Why? Because Chachamim, when they established Meshicha for Metaltalin, they did not say that Mois, that money is eliminated. They didn't say that Kinyan of money is eliminated and cancelled. They said that you need Meshicha Vagba also, or instead, but not that if somebody does a Kinyan through Mois, it's not considered a Bichlal Kinyan. That's why he's not. You're allowed to. He says that the Mekudesh is a Chumrah. Rabbi Kiva Eger right away points out on the Smeh, that not Mekudesh is L'chumrah, she's Mekudesh is Mamash Al Pidin. Why? Because if you can look later in the Siman, if the seller who sells something and there was no Meshicha done by the buyer, the money that he has in his pocket is a loan to him until the Kinyan is complete, and you're allowed to be Mekadesh a woman with a loan. with money that you borrowed. Doesn't mean it doesn't have to be money that is yours. It could be money that you borrowed. You could still work. You could still work on this. Therefore, she's mekudeshes al pi din. However, if the koine was mekadesh with the keli before he did meshicha, how was he mekadesh with the keli before he did meshicha? He didn't move it to the shoes. He paid for it, and he did a kinyan chalifin or something of the sort, or a kinyan gavsuda or something to So whatever he did something which will transfer the ownership of the object to her without him ever doing meshicha on it. And then he says, in such a case, then it's not so clear if she's mekudeshes or not. Then it becomes a machlekes. If after takonas chachamim a kinyan midiraisa still works, or kinyan midiraisa is completely obliterated. And the first Pesach Tshuva over here tells you, go look in what I wrote in Even Ezer, that the woman is mekudeshes even though there was no Mashiach done over there, and that the kinyan midiraisa helps, a kinyan midiraisa helps even after Chachamim cancel it. That's what Pesach Tshuva tells you. Look over there, and he sends you to where to look. Let's go back to Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, now, this is all, this whole argument about whether Mashiach works or Mashiach doesn't work is only regarding Mechira. But regarding Matane, Midiraisa Mashiach does work. Only by Mechira do we say that Midiraisa Mois Kainis and only Chachamim are second Mashiach. But by Matane, Mashiach does work. And he says this is based on a Taisvis, and he brings a Shita Mekubetzes in Baba Metzia Daf Mem Zayin, which brings a Ritva, which proves this from the Taisvis, and he brings the Shita Mekubetzes also brings the Ramban, the Ramban disagrees, and he says even by Matana Mashiach doesn't work. Mashiach does not work for anything Midiraisa, any Metaltlim Midiraisa. That's what he brings. He says he just brings that. But his opinion seems like that Rabbi Akiva Eiger holds that Midiraisa Mashiach does work for a Matana. Now the Nesivis takes it a little bit further in Biurim Sifkat and Aleph and Chidush and Sifkat and Gimel, same thing. That in a place where there is no transfer of money, b'chlal part of the situation, whether it's because it's in lieu of a debt or because it's a matana or whatever it is, then Mashiach is kinda even midiraisa. Or when a guy tells him, give the money to somebody else. Now, where does this apply to? Whether whether you need Mashiach, whether Mashiach without Mois works today, or you need Mashiach with Mois, or Mois without Mashiach works, etc., applies into something which we all know, which is the halachas of Dalad Minim. There is a big machlekes whether you have to, there's a Magen Avram, that you have to pay for the Dalad Minim before Yom Tov. We know minig of the Rabbeim Dafke not to pay before and take it on credit. It's written in Minog Chabad, at least some of the years, maybe most of the years it was like that. And then we have the Mishnah Brura, which says it's better, Not to pay, yeah. Always pay later, after Yom Tov. There steht Minog Chabad. Oitzar Minhage Chabad, as far as I recall. It's a known thing that Rabbeim did not pay for the Dalad Minim before. So it's definitely the Rebbe did not pay for the Dalad Minim before. So it's paid after.
Not just by Shemata.
Not just the whole, every year. Every year.
Why not?
Why not? Because they didn't hold it. You need to. Sefer Minhagim, yeah? Ein Medak. No, I'm talking the Rebbeim were makpid not to. The Sefer Minhagim says that you don't have to stress out about it. You have to stress out about it. The Mishnah Brura says Tev L'Hachmer. But I'm telling you that the Rebbe was makpid, or I can't say for sure makpid, but it was quite often that the Rebbe did not pay before Yom Tov. We usually paid after Yom Tov. If you look in Imrei Bina, Dinei Yom Tov, Siman Chaf Aleph Ois Ches. No, sorry. We jump too far. Go to Machne Ephraim. Machne Ephraim, Hilchos Kinyan Mashiach, Siman Beis. Over there, the Machne Ephraim brings an interesting machlekes between him and his son. He says, what is the machlekes about? Somebody bought Dalad Minim for sukkahs and didn't pay for them. But he did Mashiach. Actually, Ragba, whatever, he did a Kinyan with the Dalad Minim. He walked out of the store with them, but he didn't pay for them yet. Machne Ephraim says, you're not Yotzei Yedei Chavasai. Why? Because a Kinyan Midrabanan doesn't work for Mitzvah Deraisa. Deraisa has to be Lochem. Deraisa, you need Mois. The fact that Chacham Masak and Mashiach or Akbad doesn't work for a Deraisa. And he brings over there that his son disagrees with him. Brings what his son says, and his son proves from the Rashba and the Teisvus and the Ran that a Kinyan Midrabanan does work for a Deraisa. Why? Mitzad Hefker Bez and Hefker. And you Yotzei Yedei Chavasai. What's interesting is, what the son over there writes is, that one of the rayas that he got from his father, one of the rayas that he has for this din, his father told him. But the Machne Ephraim brings what he holds, then he brings what his son holds, and what his son says, Bishmai, that he held for Kert. That's interesting, see the relationship between them, but it's all printed in the Machne Ephraim. Hilchos Kinyan Mashiach, Siman Beis. Yeah. Yeah. That's the whole thing. For the Matana, yeah, but I don't remember which. So there is, I don't remember who it is, one of the later Achronim as a Psachidish and a Tshuva, that Mashiach, Hagbah, and all these things are only examples of the Chachamim gave of doing a Kinyan. But a Kinyan, I can't remember who it is now off the bat, a Kinyan is the act of doing something with the object, whatever it is. So, when I give you Matana Nasal Hachzer, the Lulav Nesreg, and you picked it up, and or you just shook it without picking it up 3 Tfachim, and you didn't pay for it, the fact that you did something with the object becomes, it made it yours.
Simple question on this whole thing. You're making a bracha on the lulav. Let's say you picked up a lulav. So you make a bracha, good. Esrog you never picked up, so how can you make a bracha if you don't have an esrog that's yours even now? Maybe if the lulav I understand you picked up, so that's you can make a bracha. But esrog you didn't pick up. So how are you making a bracha?
It's me'achshav, maybe.
What do you mean me'achshav?
Maybe it's me'achshav. It's all for later. Well, the bracha now is based on the kinyan I'm going to be doing soon. Can't sign. I don't know. The Imrei Bina and Dinei Yom Tov Siman Chaf Aleph Ois Ches says that he gives an interesting kav over here. He says, what's the reason why Mashiach is not koine midaraisa? Only mois are koine midaraisa. Because there's no Gmar Das from the seller to transfer to you ownership of something until you pay. He's not ready to say. There's no Gmar Das, so there's no Kinyan. So the Imrei Bina says, but he says, once the Chacham were Mesakin, that Mashiach does work, it automatically affected the Gmiras Das of every Yid. Now that he knows that according to Torah, according to Chachamim, Mashiach is a Kinyan. So when he sees somebody doing Mashiach on something, he gave it to somebody doing Mashiach and he didn't pay him for it, in his mind he understands the Gmiras Das, that's what works. Because Torah Yid, that's how it works. That's a Gmiras Das. Therefore, Yotzei Yedei Chavasai. With a Dalad Minim that he didn't pay for, he only did Mashiach. The Avnei Nezer says, okay, but let's now say, go back to the Hefker Bez and Hefker of the Machne Ephraim, the son of the Machne Ephraim. The host, what is the son Hefker Bez and Hefker? That's why a Kinyan Derabanan helps for Deraisa. He says, but there's a whole Machlokes, what Hefker Bez and Hefker means. We also discussed it in the past in Shiurim. Does Hefker Bezdin, Hefker means that Bezdin has the power, we discussed it in Choshen, we discussed it in Mispat last year also. Does Hefker Bezdin, Hefker means that the Bezdin has the power to transfer something which is yours to somebody else? Or does it mean that the Bezdin has the power to remove your ownership from it but not to transfer it to somebody else? Right, that's a machlokes. So now the question is, regarding this, what's Hefker Bezdin Hefker? If you're going to say that the Hefker Bezdin Hefker is that it only removes your bailus, takes you out of the picture, the seller, but doesn't transfer it to somebody else, how does that help you for a kinyan derabanan? You say a kinyan derabanan is going to get transferred, but there's no transfer of ownership here through the Mashiach if there's no mois.
Can't say exactly Hefker.
So he says the only way it works is because the moment he says the moicher after the Kanas Chazal that Mashiach is kaina, the moment the moicher sees Mashiach is Mesiyash. He gives a yush. Now if it's yush, it's not Hefker Bezdin Hefker, it's not yush. He goes Miyash. He sees somebody that Mashiach is Miyash on it. The moment is Miyash, another person made a kinyan was Echem in a Hefker.
I understand the problem. If you say after this, unless it's only mafkia,
Yeah.
but the other guy did it now, it's not the problem.
That's what it says.
It's only the Rabbanan against the Raisa. But now that this is amazing.
Right, so he says either mitzad Hefker Bezdin Hefker, and if you hold Hefker Bezdin Hefker, it doesn't perfectly work in such a scenario. The fact that the seller knows that Chachamim created this kinyan makes it into that the moicher was Mesiyash. Moicher was Mesiyash, again became Hefker. Huh?
Why do you need this word Yush? Why is Hefker Bezdin Hefker?
No, he says if people have issues with Hefker Bezdin Hefker. And he says, and therefore, when you pick up the esrog and the lulav, you kind of midiraisa, because as chiyah mina hefker, it works midiraisa. Now let's go to one more point. We have a few minutes left in the sif. Are you able to be kind of metaltalin with a shtar, or it doesn't work with a shtar? It only do through money. The Knesset Agdela Goysatur Salaf brings a whole 6 lines of paiskim that you cannot be kaina metaltalin with a shtar. It's an ois alef, the first Goysatur of Knesset Agdela on this Siman. In ois beis, he says, and even if you're going to use the legal government shtar to transfer metaltalin from one to another, also doesn't work. But in ois gimel, he says, well, let's take a step back from the statement. We have the Radbaz, Chelik Beis Siman Reish Pei Zayin, that if the minig in this town is to be kind of metaltalin from one to another with a shtar, then it works. Mitzad Tzitumta. Valachas Kama V'Kama, if the minig in town is to transfer metaltalin from one to another with a shtar, a Yiddish shtar. And we're soon going to see exactly if this works or not. There's a big machlekes on that. Ois Vav, the Knesset Agdela brings from the Shas Shus Ben Yom and Zev Siman and Daled, that when it says mois, money over here, dvar teila mois koines, it means silver, gold, copper, any kind of coins that are over there. Just want to point out to you, there's no time to get into it now, that there's a whole discussion in Hilchos Ribos and Alter Rebbe and other places, especially in Sif Lamed Gimel over there, if which coins are considered coins, which coins are not considered coins, but are considered something like a product that's not really coins. Are you going to say Dvar Mais coins? Maybe it's Medin Khalifin because it's like Peiris. I'm not going to get into it. If you want to focus into it, you go in Sif Lamed Gimel in the Alter Rebbe and look within the Ma'anim Mekayim. There's a Machne Ephraim on it. There's in the Neisei Kelim and the Shulchan Aruch. The Mata Shimon Nagoy Satura is base adds. It says you can't be kind with a shtar. And you cannot metaltalin, and you can't be kind of metaltalin with oidisa. And he brings it from the Rashba. Now, but what happens if you want to buy only with money? So the Mata Shimon he says in the name of Machne Ephraim that if the seller tells the buyer, give the money to Pliny ben Pliny, and he will transfer you the metaltalin, maybe it does work as a kinyan, but that's more relevant to say, hey, we're going to get to it next time, probably tomorrow, we're going to be Mashal Mashir. And Ois Yud Beis, the Mata Shimon over there says that, and with that we're going to conclude, that if, and he brings it from the Machne Ephraim, also, from the same place, Machne Ephraim in Hilchos Kinyan Mois, Simon Beis, that if the buyer gives money to the seller, and now, so he did the Deraisa part, now he has to do Akba. But this Yid is a lazy guy. Tells his workers, go pick it up for me. So he says, if the workers are Yidden, then they're kinda. Even if they didn't have in mind to be kinda for the Yid. The fact that they picked it up for him, it works. But if it's Goyim, he says it's a suffix. Tzarechiyun, if that worked as a kinyan on his behalf or not. With that we will conclude. Tomorrow.